Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Slim Cogcast. This is our Slim Cognito, and let me tell you about a little sham called, well, you should know by the title of this video and the title of the pod. So yeah, we reformatting the podcast. I'll go ahead and announce this now. We're reformatting it. It's we're gonna do away with the gaming news. Y'all don't know nor care about it. And somehow I don't want to single out the audience. But not everybody is interested in the gaming news or what's going on with the companies or stocks or, companies being bought. Like, it's just not in you all's interest, and I can't fault y'all for that. However, I feel that it would be easier for me and hopefully, what's the right word here? Digestible for you all if I were to say make the podcast about one singular topic and we roll with that. So we're going to reformat it into less of a podcast and more of a long form review of media that I've been watching of the week or games that I've played that need to, have attention drawn to them for that week. So without further ado, let's talk about House of the Dragon, which is a prequel for the Game of Thrones series of seasons and shows that was previously one of HBO's biggest shows in, 2014 or so? And right now, it is the hottest show right now. I think it just dipped to like number 2 in popularity, like recent, according to IMDb. And the highest rating we've seen, almost a 9 out of 10. So here we go. And you never see a 9 out of 10 on IMDb. Anyways, now, one of the main things to bring about is this whole show is following the Targaryen house when they were bountiful in power, resources, men, etc. They had kingdoms and dragons, all over the place. So this is a special type of prequel that really adds more context to what was going on, and basically everything that Daenerys was squawking about mercilessly and annoyingly on and on and on and on for all those seasons, we actually get to see it happen. So we get to see the Targaryens actually be something, and it's right now centered around 2 main characters at the forefront, which would be King Viserys Targaryen and his daughter, what was her name? Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. Now, each are played by Paddy Considine, and Emma Darcy, respectively. Now, the Targaryens, of course, they were known for having dragons and the most powerful army in the 9 realms, the most powerful king in the 9 realms, and it was home of the Iron Throne, originally the Iron Throne. The Targaryen Iron Throne is also the same throne that was seen in Game of Thrones that the Lannisters had, but the Lannisters took it after the reign of the Mad King, etc., etc. But we're now getting to see exactly, either we're going to see the Targaryen house fall from grace, or we're going to see them fight for their position at the top. Now, you also have a special guest that's been doing an amazing job thus far, Mr. Matt Smith. I think he is most famously known for playing Doctor Who, but he is now Prince Daemon Targaryen, which Daemon is a character we can't really I can't really feel him out just yet, but we'll cover him. We're going to do our usual format. We're going to go by character by character and really go into detail about who they are and what's been going on. And I will be covering the first 4 episodes that have been released thus far as of September 12th, 2022. So, starting first, King Viserys Targaryen. One of the biggest things about the king right now is that he only has a daughter, and one of the biggest things that's going on with him and his plot points is that his wife, or the queen, is pregnant with child, and she, is that redundant? Are you just supposed to say pregnant with child, or she's with child, or she's pregnant? So she got a bun in the oven, and the biggest thing to pay attention to is that he's looking for an heir, and he has no son. He only has a daughter, and it would make his house and his kingdom look weak if he were to make his daughter his heir. because of course during this time women were not allowed to inherit the throne, only the sons. Women became queens only through marriage. So what you have here is a predicament for King Viserys, because he wants to have a son and his current wife is doing her best to give him one. But later on, she made it known that she has not had much luck with bearing children, because she had several miscarriages and stillborns in the past because of the lack of medical advancement during the time. Childbirth was an extreme miracle for the most part, and there was not enough science that gone into women's pregnancy stages and how to properly ensure the health of a baby. So a lot of children did not make it back then when it came to pregnancies and childbirth. Because of such, they didn't have the medical advancements that we have in the modern day. So it was common to see such a thing, and it's not only been a detriment to the women, but also it has been a burden on the men as well, the soldiers and knights. Even the king has some medical ailments that just cannot be helped. He is plagued with some type of infection that every injury that he takes, the wound just refuses to heal, and it would just fester and be filled with pus and dying skin. And the only remedies they had was to either cauterize it, or they would cover it in maggots and let the maggots eat off the dead skin. But it would not heal the issue. The issue is that the bacteria is set in the body, and he's being poisoned, likely because of sitting on the throne, he says. So it could be iron poisoning, and if it's iron poisoning, then that would mean that he needs penicillin or some type of antibacterial medicinal. Let me break it down a little bit. You need some type of penicillin or antibacteria medicine, which they don't have yet. The most things that they could come up with is like drinking certain teas, eating certain herbs, or cutting off a limb. And that's the best that they could think of. So it's getting worse and worse. At the start, it was just 1 or 2 spots on his back, and it was small. But by the time episode 4 aired, and we got the chance to take a glimpse at a sex scene with the king and the queen, which he chose his new queen, Rhaenyra Targaryen? No, I think what was her name? Or was it Alicent? Yeah. Alicent Hightower, that's her name. He had wed Alicent Hightower in order to ensure that he could build a new family. So here we are. Now, of course, I have to make this known. Of course, there are sex scenes, but it's kind of, I don't know how graphic. I can't say if it is graphic, but his back is filled with these legions disgustingly over the course of these 4 episodes. And I think the course of these 4 episodes, like, I think a couple of years passed or so, because some of the children have grown to be quite big. But oh my goodness, it's disgusting, and it's getting worse on him. And I think that's what's really gonna do him in. And I think it also ate up like 2 of his fingers on his left hand. It's crazy. Now, I have to bring attention to this as well. Shout out to Steve Toussaint. He is playing Lord Corlys Velaryon. Velaryon as in the House of Velaryon. The Velaryon house are actually people of color. Dark-skinned black people with snow white dreadlocks. It is so cool. It's so cool. And if you've heard, Velaryon, well, they have the steel that is famous for being able to kill White Walkers if you watch the original Game of Thrones. So they also have their own dragons and one of the most powerful houses and kingdoms in the 9 realms. It is amazing. It is amazing. And I want to see more of it. It's actually super interesting. But Lord Corlys is one of the advisors to the king as well, of course, because who sits on the Iron Throne is the king of all the other realms. And not only do the Targaryen family sit at the Iron Throne rule, but the Hightower family and the Velaryon family all have to answer to them. So this is just how it is. Now, the most interesting thing about the king right now is that he has a lot of stress on his head to ensure that his family stays healthy. His daughter, she's more of a tomboy. She's not submissive, and there's no bottom in her at all. And it is shown later on, and once I'll talk about it a bit later in the podcast, but there's a moment where she has her sexual awakening, and she proved to be too dominant for one person. It's kind of hilarious. So yeah, right now the king is trying his best to ensure that his family stays strong beyond his death, because his health is waning and it's worrying him terribly. It's worrying the queen terribly. So the reason that he remarried, let's talk about why he married, why he wed the Hightower name into his family. Well, the reason being is because the wife had health complications once again during her pregnancy once she was trying to deliver the baby. And it turns out they had to do a C-section, which was a very early and not perfected process yet. And in order to do so would mean the death of the mother. And the C-section causes a lot of blood loss because they don't know how to properly prepare for it or care for it at the time. It was in its very early stages of medical science. And the king had to make a decision. If he did not do the C-section, then both her and the baby will die. But if he did, then he could save the baby. So he had to comfort her and tell her they're going to pull the babe out, babe. Just don't worry. They're going to pull the babe out. And of course, she had to sit there with no pain medication and get cut open and bleed to death. Now, as hard as this was for me to watch, it was well acted. I have to give credit to everyone involved. They did an amazing job. Now, Daemon Targaryen, who is the brother of King Viserys. Daemon is a prince, of course, Prince Daemon Targaryen. He's not really fast and loose off the handle, but he's just aloof and does what he wants type of guy. He's a devil-may-care type of attitude to most things, but more on the nonchalant side of it, you know? And oftentimes it gets dangerous because he will do almost anything to get whatever he wants. And it makes sense, you know, given that he was born into royalty and he's expected to act a certain way and he's expected to have certain things. He's very privileged, I guess you could say. Now, the thing about this is that his morals are completely gray. We are not sure about what his motivation is thus far, but he's taken an attempt to steal one of the dragon eggs from his own family, which was sworn to an unborn child that did not make it from his aunt, the previous wife of King Viserys. So, upon that, he did his best to steal that egg and try to raise another dragon of his own in a kingdom of his own. But once the king announced that his daughter Rhaenyra would be his heir, that's when all type of issues started to arise. And there began some infighting and disagreements. So much so that Lord Corlys Velaryon decided to go to Prince Daemon behind Viserys' back. And they're probably planning a coup. So it's hard to say what they're up to just in these 4 episodes, but you can definitely bet that they're doing what they can to work against him. And it's kind of crazy. So I find it good. That's the Game of Thrones that we know and love. You know, the politics, basically. And it also makes sense for Lord Corlys to do such a thing, because if you were to have an entire kingdom that has to obey and submit to another king, the Targaryens, you don't want to, working under him also has him represent you. And the king that you obey and represent, naming a woman his heir shows weakness and foolishness in kingly decisions. When you have someone like Daemon that's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the kingdom stays strong in image and both in action, well, of course people would be more willing to follow them, especially seeing that the king is having, physical ailments. He can't birth a son. He's having issues controlling his daughter because she's defiant. Why did I say it like that? Daughter. He's having issues controlling his daughter. Her defiance is becoming the utmost importance and almost the utmost annoyance. But anyway, yeah, the names are really, they may be confusing at the moment, but the longer you watch it, it starts to stick. Now, of course, we have Fabian Frankel playing Sir Criston Cole. So Criston is basically just a personal guard for the Princess Rhaenyra. She's basically, he's more of a I am at your service, princess. I wouldn't make a move without your say type of guy. And one of the biggest gripes that Rhaenyra had is that her being princess, she was forced to marry other princes from other kingdoms in order to strengthen the family. And they're just, throwing guys at her who have ridden horseback day and night to come and try to appeal to her and see if they could, combine families. And she didn't want either of those guys. And she sees her life as a princess to be a prison, a gilded prison, if you would. For those that don't know, gilded would mean gold plated or covered in gold, but not gold all the way down. Pretty on the outside, but really it's still just as hard and cold as any other prison. So if I were to say this is a gilded jewelry, it's not real gold, it's just covered in gold, a layer of gold on top. Now, a gilded prison, she says, she doesn't say that directly. This is just me, my assessment. This gilded prison of hers, she complains about it to Alicent Hightower, and Alicent sees it as, you're kind of foolish because not many women get to choose their mates. And she was talking about how, they get bought and sold and, this and third all over the place. And here you are with the opportunity to choose who you want to betroth, and you're acting like a spoiled brat, and it was it was apt of her to say. She said so without saying so much, but that's exactly what she was getting at. And she was also trying to imply that I never wanted to marry a father. I was forced to do so, number one, and two, it was the best decision for her as a woman, seeing as King Viserys was the most powerful king in all the realms. So she had no choice but to put her best foot forward and marry him. So yeah, it was her best option and the highest position that she could attain as a woman at the time. So common sense to her, But that doesn't mean that she wanted to be with him. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because Rhaenyra, her main focus is to find her place in the world because she's not like other girls. And her attempt to do so causes a lot of backlash with her being so, I guess you could say kind of more tomboyish, but she plays her lady role because it was taught to her. But she's more tomboyish, and it makes the rest of the realm gossip and look upon the king in a certain way, and etc, etc, etc. But I feel like it's gonna take us on a good journey of growth for this character. I can't wait. But the thing is, her and her uncle Daemon Targaryen, they both know how to ride dragons. They're very well versed with the dragons. Having Targaryen blood makes you able to communicate and bond with them, etc. So on a regular basis, you see them riding dragons into battle and just for fun. Now, of course, she is more shamed for riding dragons. And even her mother was, mentioned that you need to take a bath, you stink of dragon, and blah, blah, blah. And then she would go to her father and she'd say, you smell of a dragon, and they just, were... They dig into her in that way, but they never said anything like that when when her uncle gets off of a dragon. They didn't judge them for that. They didn't keep the same energy basically. Now I mentioned earlier that Lord Corlys decided to go behind Viserys' back and do a deal with Daemon and see if they could do something outside of his approval. So they started a war to go after the king of these crabs, or the leader of these crab people, whatever they are, I'm not sure. But they had a bunch of killer crabs all along this shore of mud that's in front of a huge interwoven system of caves, which is like the ultimate battleground that's hard to penetrate. It's like miles, like several miles of killer crabs in mud, and then they're all holed up on a mountain-esque structure or rock structure where they have high ground to shoot arrows, and they all hiding in burrows inside that mountain, little caves and stuff. So how exactly do you win that fight? Well, they figured it out, and this is what happened. First, they went in with the dragons, blowing fire, doing what they could after the infantrymen were killed mercilessly. And there's this habit that the leader of these people would do, is take nails and nail people to wooden stakes and let the crabs eat them. And it's crazy and actually pretty graphic, but also pretty cool. Now, the other thing about that is, once Daemon, of course, Daemon showed up with the dragon, he did what he could, but they all just retreated inside the caves and they couldn't advance any longer. And honestly, in those caves, they live there, so it's their advantage. So it would be dumb to actually advance into the cave where they would be able to easily beat them. Now, here's the smart part. Daemon, well, I guess it's smart enough because it worked in the show, but Daemon had a bright idea to go out and just surrender and fly a white flag and wave it around. But the crab people were still skeptical, so they knocked their arrows just to be sure and be ready. Daemon shows up, kneels with his sword in hand, presenting it in a surrender. And as soon as he had the moment, it drew them all out and made them mostly, they weren't on edge or, prepared to fight. It drew them out of the caves. In that moment, the dragon swooped down and started burning people, and first he just started killing everybody. And he was actually good, like insanely good. And as he killed left and right, the dragon shows up, burn them all so they can't get back in, and they won. Killed all of them and brought back the king, queen, whatever, the leader of the crab people as a torso and nothing more. And the hammer, there was this hammer that the leader of the crab people would use to nail the people to the wooden stakes. Well, he brought that hammer back to his father while wearing the crown that the crab leader was wearing. Because after defeating him, they named him king of the world of the narrow sea. And Daemon not only shows up with the crown on his head, but also the hammer in his hand. Tosses it at the feet of his brother Viserys, and told him, here, add it to the throne. And defeated, another kingdom that's been defeated, Now, this puts him back in good graces with Viserys, and Viserys, brings him around and starts trusting him again. Of course, everybody starts giving him praise, celebrations, etc., etc. But all the while, he wasn't completely sure that the reason that the king was mad at him is because he did not tell them, if I remember right, he didn't tell them to start that fight. He didn't tell them to start that battle. But he did it in tandem with the support of Lord Corlys Velaryon and his army, which he also has other family members with the same gray dreadlocks like him. It's so sick. Disregard if you hear a sound in the background. That was my grandma. And I don't even know if I remember if I'm gonna go back and edit it out, so deal with it. Anyway, where was I? Literally, where was I? Yeah, so Lord Corlys Velaryon was working with Prince Daemon in order to get this war won, and they finally won. He came back victorious, and I believe this is going to lead to more than what you think. And it may just be a small battle, but a won victory nonetheless. And yeah, I can't wait to see more. Now, here's the next thing that's gotten really crazy. When it came to about episode, I think 3 or so, and you had Daemon, now that he's returned and the king has accepted him with open arms, he decided to get Princess Rhaenyra to sneak out and spend some time amongst the common folk, but not as a princess, just a normal person. And Rhaenyra was, doing her best to disguise herself. And once she was walking down the streets with him, of course he had a hood on, and she had on a beanie and some regular clothes. And she was bumped into, and she was like, "Out of me way, boy." Some dude said, "Out of me way, boy," and she got excited. She said, "He called me boy," and that shed a little more light to her character, I feel, with that little bit of subtlety, because it seems, and I call it subtlety because it's not completely on the nose. It's enough. It would only seem on the nose for a person who's like a movie buff or TV show buff and watches a lot of stuff. But seeing as this is made for the common folk as well, it's subtle enough. And it seems that, yeah, she does not feel at home as a submissive woman who was made to wed and procreate. Now, of course, Princess Rhaenyra had a good time. They watched the show, stage performance, which was a bunch of jesters making light of the events that happens in the kingdom, that she would be named heir, things like that, and so many other things. Right down to the point, well, I don't have to mention that. You just watch for yourself. But yeah, there's some distasteful jokes there as well. Now, one of the biggest issues that Princess Rhaenyra faces is that she's still young and she doesn't completely understand the world. And yet she's trying to change it or go against it because it doesn't fit her. And I gotta admire her fire. She's pretty damn smart for that. You know what I mean? Or at least, I won't say smart. No. She's bold. She's got confidence, and I like that. Now, one of the biggest things is, while she was watching this show, she decided that it wasn't really much to be offended by. She actually took it pretty well. It did hurt her a bit, and you can tell, but she moved on about it, And it was at this time that Daemon not only, took her around and let her see the sights, but also he decided to take her to a brothel. I'm gonna keep the mention of this scene very light because I don't want to want to go into details. But of course, Daemon is her uncle and she is his niece. And of course, they were there without their disguises on. So a bunch of people saw them. Word got back to the king, and once the hand informed the king, it caused some discourse, which she had to then deny it happening. And in order to do so, discredit the word of the hand, which in turn caused the hand to be removed from his position. Now, once the king loses his hand, well, of course, that made him more vulnerable. So it seems that they are doing what they can in order to tear him down. Of course, that seems to be the case. Now, after Rhaenyra has this first-time experience, this learning experience, she goes back to her bedroom and she decides to court. I won't say court, but she talked Sir Criston into coming into her bedroom. She seduced him in there. And I want to mention the scene prior to this, but basically she does not, like I said, she's not submissive. And because of that, it worked for him and not for her. You know what I mean? It worked for her and it worked for Criston, is what I meant to say, because like I said, Criston's more at her service as a personal night guard to the princess. So it was fitting for her to demand or order or easily influence him into coming into her bedroom. So yeah, she was officially deflowered, and what they say, sullied. And once a princess is sullied, then her value diminishes incredibly. And the other men that are at an attempt to wed her for other houses and whatnot, they don't find her to be as, well, they won't find her to be as valuable or attractive because she's already been deflowered. She's not something that no one else can have anymore. So anyway, moving on from that topic before anybody injects some stupidity, because I know y'all want to see it. Just be smarter than that. All right. So anyway, now you have Rhaenyra, almost unbeknownst to her, aiding Prince Daemon and Lord Corlys to take down her father and ruin her family. And she doesn't even know it. Now, I think that's the bulk of everything that I could tell you right now, as far as I can remember. Wait. Now, another thing that I will mention is that the thing about Daemon Targaryen and Viserys is that because they are brothers, Viserys is like, he feels an obligation to constantly protect his brother. And Daemon is constantly doing nefarious things toward him and never giving him a chance to like just run the kingdom peacefully. He always got to do some snake shit. And you end up having the king giving him pass after pass after pass. And the king even gave him another pass after he deflowered his daughter. And that's the biggest issue with him, is that the more weight your crown holds, the bigger your throne and the bigger your title as king, the more you have to worry about reputation and appearances just to make sure that no one tries to tear y'all down, because those on the outside always think that they could, combat against a position of power. Every like most people who pine after and thirst for power oftentimes just want the image that comes with it, but don't know how to wield power, period. They just do their best to say or convince others that they're worthy of power. Most humans are not, though. So that's what ends up making power struggles so eternal, because no one is really worthy of power for the most part. Most people can't handle being a leader of that caliber, but everybody wants it. So the next person, even if they're terrible at it, they still want it. Anywho, that's everything that I can really give you a lowdown on. The battle was amazing. The outfits and wigs have actually been done pretty well. The people of color black characters are great as well, and it's all fitting for the time period that this would take place. Everything makes sense. So this is a good show, and I can't get enough. Can't wait for next week. It's only been 4 episodes. So I'll see y'all next week. I'll give you the whole lowdown of everything that happens. And we will be following this show for quite a while, actually, because I'm a fan now. And y'all notice, if you've been following the podcast, I talked about Game of Thrones ad infinitum, and it's been crazy, but enjoyable. So yeah. And then eventually we will jump back into Power once I get done detoxing, because holy shit, that was an intense ass show. So yeah, y'all take care. Love, peace, and head grease. Hug your nephew and love your niece. And always remember the channel motto: intentions are the most important. Actions ain't nothing but loud, and words don't mean a damn thing. Take care of yourselves and peace.